Welcome back to the more proper VTuber thing. I've gotten my audio better through some magical NVIDIA stuff, and that's cool and all. Now, of course, this VTuber is kind of interesting in that they're an idealized version of myself, if that makes any sense. And, well, you already know my voice, so there's no point in changing it. Plus, mathematically, I don't need to, but that's besides the point. So that's actually going quite well. The thing I'm curious about though is whether or not I have ideas for some technological things on the agenda, and I think some of the ideas I want to do are interesting in their substance in a sense. So like the thing that's interesting about these is that like if I look at my notes here, one thing I want to start is a show called Modding Matcha, which is a sort of spin-off of WeLink's Homebrew Tea, a show that talks about the latest news in the modding community. Well, in this case, this covers more than just the scene news. It has something like scene stories. We're talking about various things in the modding community that are memorable in some way. So either it's things that were good milestones or something like that, or if not milestones, it was something that just wasn't exactly. So if it wasn't a milestone, then it was something a lot more different, if that makes any sense. In the sense of it being not a bad moment, but not a good one either. So like, obviously talking about and sometimes some information just is not the best quality, if that makes any sense. Not the best quality. Yeah, I wish there was like the community could be so much better than it is now, which is a problem. But I mean, I have seen a lot of positive things come out of it, which is nice. I'd mostly talk about those because the negatives are probably not the best choice of things to discuss. I have a whole dossier of it that you don't need. I mean, because I just know it would just not go well. But memorable could also include, hey, whenever I was in the room when major discoveries were made, or my attempts at digging into in so you got situations like that, but that by far isn't exactly the most common, if that makes any sense. And also a series called Outlier Overview, describing all about the niche things out there. So like it would cover like niche technology or situations where something is the exception to a rule, if that makes any sense. So something is just like the exception to a rule and is much different. And of course, like every uh, creative who does coding, typography, sound font making, music composition, all that sort of thing, all creative stuff. I want to make something called like development diaries for the code section, and then design diaries for, and basically talking about design, code, and design philosophies and processes. Basically, itch.io devlogs of things I've already written, but on YouTube now. Gaming gems being me gushing about my favorite games. Though I don't know about any footage of them, unfortunately. And, well, I also have a section I want to do about, my experiences as an NB. And yeah, this Sono is intentionally designed around that. You wouldn't believe how many sliders I had to toy with in VR to do this. And yes, this is the VR avatar. I didn't use anything from Booth. It's fine. The funny thing about this, though, is that and so it works, and but it was a nightmare to find working software for I use they, them, and a ton of neopronouns, but that's outside the scope of this. And even biologically, I'm neither male nor female, so. So I wonder how. And again, most YouTubers seem to be the gaming ones, and I'm like, the only game I could play that I don't think would cause any. Well, I mean Minecraft, but even that is. So perhaps I'd be one of the non-gaming VTubers most of the time, at least here on YouTube. Not because the games I play are bad per se, it's just more. They need to be a bit happier, but still not enough to be counted as, we don't want another Cocoa Melon. I have no intention of providing that either, so uh, don't get your socks on a twist over that. I'm also, so for instance, if I forgot to talk about I mean, for the latest modding news, there's a bunch of decompilations of, GameCube games that are, like, one of them, like Mario Party 1, the Mario Party 4 version, if I remember correctly, is just about completely compiled, and Animal Crossing on the GameCube is nearing decompilation. There's been contributors joining left and right to decompile that game before the 2030 cutoff for the clock. So it's a mixture of old and new matcha. For seeing stories, I'll just say, like, I was one of the people who helped figure out the font format for the IQ Player version of Animal Crossing, specifically based on the N64 version. And I was involved in figuring that out, and I even helped decompress the game to allow it to work. See, and I did it using a method that I didn't know would work, if that makes any sense. And so it was a very helpful. So it was very useful, and I even made, for DOSBox X, I made an open source replacement for the nx86.bmp file, which, again, the one in use now is not my original one, but I made the original one, and it's still there as a dedicated split off if needed. The main thing, though, that's really interesting is that, and I also recall a lot of the modding community, due to the fact that I'm definitely neurodiverse, it's contributed to sort of situations there that are, oh, heck no. But thankfully, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Though I also put up with no end of indignities in it. But not all of the sins that went on there are something that can be discussed publicly for a lot of reasons. And, well, that's because just how much I've not exactly endured the best angels of people. For Outlier overview, I'll start, like, the whole concept comes from the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote about, how people always, the outliers, it's a complete web of good research and all that. And though, to describe someone's birth date as that is kind of funny, considering I have a very whack one, but that's besides the point. I think the main concern, though, is that, so if I have to choose, like, a bit of niche content, it's like obscure. It's like, well, I made OS tans of my own code and gave them personas for some reason. But that's just me. If we go to more niche stuff, for niche stuff, you can find these days, companies that, like Noritake's VFD displays, or Noritake's VFD displays. They're interesting in that they support things that even OLEDs don't. In that it's amazing, like they have touch vacuum fluorescent displays that have the ability to use double wide characters in them. So the thing about those, it's fun. So and yet they offer things like the ability to change fonts that no other display company can. This is not a sponsor, by the way. I just researched when trying to get Unifont EX to somehow end up on a physical display. I'm still working on that. And that's not the only E that's going on in situations like the present. I would say in terms of, and so like other outliers would be, hey, look, I'm the person who uses headphone jack and SD slot. If you got a problem with that, well, you're Apple. And if you want to take things a bit further, let's just in terms of outliers. I mean, in some sense, I feel like I'm a lot different from many. Though why not? Though if it's not me, it's more. I think there's like a lot of rare products out there, like the whole situation where a person in the modding community, Shank, got a hold of an old TV that was due to be disposed of, and well, saved it. And the TV was more of a one surviving thing, if that makes any sense. So that TV kind of ended up, loved finally for once. And that was cool. The thing that's interesting, though, is that the TV was, to put it bluntly, it basically survived, even though it was thought to be the last one in existence. It might be, might not be. But once again, this is leaning heavily on the modding matcha level. If we don't focus on that, we end up finding out that, hey, it's an out. I mean, why I can say I'm an outlier is that I have heterochromia, and I actually bothered trying to reference it in this, and it's hard to photograph in person, and this was like hard to photograph, and looking in person, however, tells the full story. They're not, in real life I wear glasses, so I can't easily. So it's a case of I have to. I'm very nearsighted to the point where can't even use my phone without glasses. So from that, you can ascertain that checking my own eye color in a mirror isn't really, and like getting every detail right is kind of like trying to wet a train through a pipe, as a nostalgia nerd put it, in the sense that you can try to mitigate this, but it's not gonna like do anything. So like, but I've had, but the most, but if it's your own observations, of course you can discredit it, especially when it's someone like me. But no, because people in my real life orbit have concurred with my findings, so that's cool and all. So yeah, and to reflect that, to make it as realistic as possible, like I went to the effort of choosing an eye base that was divided in half vertically, as one of my eyes is, and then I did the ring, which is my central heterochromia, and the half division is my sectoral. But then because there's a distinct shade difference between my actual eyes in person, each eye has a different. Each eye has a different. One eye is brighter than the other in a sense. So in terms of its base color, which is already an ambiguous color, so in this VRM model, I actually bothered to manually tweak the RGB values just enough to do it, and so yeah, but I didn't, because like it's not like I have one blue, one green eye. It's more the same colors, a distinct brightness, and I don't know how that translates on the screen, especially even the blue. I don't know how it translates here. What I do know is that I spent eons trying to get VRRA to do it, and well, as you just saw, it's a good thing. Now, the only trouble is getting this to actually, work on anything that is, you know, something good. Now, I mean, I fully intend at some point to, draw reference guides on how to do this, if that makes any sense. And yes, the background image of mine, it's upscaled, not generated. The original is 400 to 240, and I'm on a pretty high resolution monitor, so that is to be expected. I used to wondering why my eyes are closing. Like it's 3 o'clock in the morning, but you know, I don't know why I do the things I do, but people be liking them. And it's interesting that and I think my ears, the ears on this thing move. Yeah, they do. Yeah, and again, this VTuber model, it's designed to represent the idealized version of me in a sense. It represents the idealized version of me, and I mean, essentially full body, but that isn't exactly relevant to this particular line of discussion. And well, it does leave you with one concern, and I mean, I'm not against the idea of appearing as a guest on anyone else's podcast, but this podcast is kind of one that I kind of, I mean, I have one like I want to talk about, my issues of, being ternary in a model that some would say is less than ternary, if that makes any sense. It's it's interesting, and it's a very interesting, powerful thing. It's also at the same time why, in a sense that I don't feel like everyone else is. In some sense, I am not even configured like everyone else, to say the least. Heck, even caffeine doesn't do anything to me, which is surprising given that this video is being done at 3 o'clock in the morning, but the key is willpower. Willpower does it fine. Maybe that's why my eyes are blinking a lot, but it's it's always an interesting turn of events when this kind of thing goes on. And hence the jiggle stuff works in this VTuber Maker VC Face. Amazing program. Certainly beats the one I was originally trying to use, which was not good. And you know what? If you at all think that if you think that I'm, I mean, I don't have any illusions that I didn't end up, at the big company, big ticket VTubers, unless, I had a really compelling story to talk about, or whatever content I'm actually doing is legitimately, separate and apart from what most VTubers do. Note that my computer I'm running this on is OP, and again, there will never be a face reveal for this. No way, not going to do it. Being the a mystical online figure is a better approach in a sense, which is to say that you know I can be faceless, fine. And sure, I have and nameless, but like, sure, I have a distinct inflection, but like we all know. So it's not like I'm. I mean, how do I say this? I was told by my sister that I have a unique inflection, but like, I mean, that's not wrong. But like, when I ran myself through a UTOW, like when I made myself a whole UTOW Lloyd in 2022, around the same month, in fact, um, I later found out, like earlier this year, that apparently the range of that UTOW, which was done at my highest range, is B2 to A5. a sharp 5, actually. So nearly 6 octaves of range, and that was not my true limit. I could go higher at the cost of volume. So mathematically, I can do any countertenor range voice, so long as it isn't a sopranos. Though the funny thing here with that is that I can. So voice training might actually work well. Hooray! But I mean, far from. I mean, I do want to voice act at some point, which would be kind of funny. But if we go to the subject of like the rain, like I mean, I can't sing worth squat, and all of it's theoretical, and my Utah and even other methods of trying to get yourself into a vocal weight haven't worked it out fine, but I defined a canonical sheet anyways, so it's just kind of, shall I say, and I've had a unique inflection and I talk kind of fast, especially for an English, for just, you know, someone who, let's just say, it could be much worse. But I mean, I don't exactly hate my voice, but heck, I've even been called a girl by phone scammers at one point. It was funny, but still scams, and we don't go near that. Why do people fall for them, anyways? That is a very important question to answer. But honestly, I would say that in terms of the situation I've had to deal with, of people not exhibiting the best judgment, I would say don't click on anything shady. And even if like I've seen enough situations with sponsorship contracts messing with people's computers that I don't want any part of that. I had to also say one more thing. It's that I'm not against my voice, and if anything, I feel like it's actually, but it's a unique inflection. But can you really place someone based on voice? I mean, you could, but you have to be one of people who knows me or whatever, and it's like, ah. I mean, and I will say, my voice is a product of history in a sense, but that's really not the exact perfect way of saying it. Yeah, it's not. It's my voice is kind of funny, but it's not intended to be. I mean, if I've made Vocaloid out of it before even voice training, I must be confident in it, correct? Well, yes. Mainly because of observations of everyone else's, if that makes any sense. And archived footage, if that also makes any sense. So in some regards, it's nice and all, and it's even validating, dare I say. The problem is whenever it kind of starts, but it does. I don't want to be part of the burly and the brawny, if that makes any sense. And I'm definitely making sure of that in for sure. But in reality, I'm happy to have this nice VTuber who, once again, does things on a minimal budget. Like the background includes Photoshop stuff, but it also includes one of my coding things too, the part in the center of it, which is cool. And the best part about this that's fun is that it's an amazing. This is it's. I've always wanted to be a VTuber for years. I didn't think I'd be able to do it until very, very recently, which is actually good news. I just, wish that I had, done this a lot sooner, but I didn't know. I didn't have a reason to care until I had to make the avatar for a certain VR game, and then it also works in Miku Miku Dance, so I could make my Vocaloid dance to this. It'd be funny, but the question is, should I? Is the question, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but not good. It's funny that I have to deal with this when it's just, you know what? I know when I tried streaming something on some time ago, it only saved the first 30 minutes of it, and I'm like, so I think I'll just say this. I'm not saying I'll have my update schedule will vary, and I might also mix up the topics depending on how I feel about something. Upload schedule will vary, and it won't be anything too wild of a wait, or unless I have things become a mess. But in theory, none of this should really be a problem. And again, I don't have any intention of engaging with any drama YouTube that might be floating around out there. Just don't engage with anything that would ain't exactly nice dinner time conversation, if that makes any sense. I come to the internet to get happy and just find happy, positive content rather than, you know, try to take in information that is bound to not be the most most pleasing way of doing so. Like, no, staying informed is one thing, but staying in, but dipping deep into the realms of you know things that make everybody mad is just not a good idea. Just sometimes there are no old bold welders. If you to like whenever you're doing, to borrow an analogy from the Darwin Awards, who had said that about a welder who won one. But really, this channel, I feel like I needed to change directions for a while now, and I think this whole thing is leading up to that. So I'd be interested to hear in the comment section if there's anything you want me to do. Anything at all. What, no, I don't mean anything, but more if you got any ideas. See what I can talk about or something like that. And again, the visuals may improve later. I'm always learning. And with that, I leave you with the knowledge of. I leave you with the words. Try to find happiness, even in situations where you might not think there's something happy in it. Happiness is not overrated. Try to be a happy person on the internet from here on out. And with that hope, I do bid you a a sayonara for the future, if that makes any sense. See you all in the funny papers, and with that, I think my voice has been stressed enough at this point, and I haven't even trained it. So My own health. See you later. Peace out. And ta-da!